Afternoon all. Some amazing chess being played yesterday in the Olympiad. Magnus Carlsen playing white against Radoslaw Wojtaszek, a 2-7-3-5 opponent. Wojtaszek had just played his rook to d8, and can you guess Magnus Carlsen's next move here? I expect many of you have seen this from yesterday's broadcast on Play Chess or elsewhere. So Magnus playing white here. If I give you 10 seconds to pause the video, what would you play here? Okay, Magnus played bishop e6, and it's very, very difficult for black to do anything about the pressure on the king side. If taking, that's an immediate disaster after taking and then taking here. That actually gets mated. So bishop e6. Now it's putting real pressure on black, and white is actually also threatening now knight h5 check, among other things, with rook takes f7 or and then maybe queen f6 after. For example, let's give black a move like queen c7, knight h5 check, g takes, for example, rook takes, is absolutely crushing. This position here is just a forced mate. You see the bishop and the queen cooperating very well in that variation for that mate. And here, if king h8, queen f6 check, so it's knight h5, just getting all the pressure basically on f7 is actually threatened. So black in this position tries to defend e8. The weakness of this last move, though, you can see the rooks are not connected here, and Magnus actually simply plays knight d5, so hitting the queen and the knight. A very, very difficult position for black. If queen b7, just trying to protect the e7 knight, then white has a free rein on the king side with just rook h3 in this position. Very, very strong move, threatening queen f6 check and rook h8 mating. If, for example, taking here, then queen h4 is mating in this position. For example, rook g8, rook f1. There's nothing black can do about this h file. It's pretty lethal. The engine suggests knight f5. That can be taken, and any attempt to run away is not really leading anywhere significant. It's a total disaster. So basically, this is a very, very powerful move. Black took on d5, probably best, but in a very bad position. After bishop takes d5, white is still free now to play this rook h3, and there's nothing really black can do here. He's pretty tied down. This pawn here is marking out some key dark squares. So black actually resigned here. If let's see, if queen c7 here, rook h3, and let's try, for example, queen e7, just queen h4, and then how is black defending against this? It's a nightmare. If rook g8, then queen h6 checkmate, so the king can't escape. And here another attempt could be rook g8 though, but this actually fails to queen f6, for example. And in this position, rook h8 is strong, threatening to take, and then queen takes g6. This is pretty lethal stuff, which black can't really do much about. For example, if he takes in this position with the king in the firing line, e5 would be absolutely crushing, and the king can't really escape over here with king d7 because there's this check dragging the king back to the firing line. And here e6. Black didn't really want to see these full implications of the final position, so he resigned here after bishop takes d5, but it seems white's just free for a crushing attack. So a remarkable attacking game there for Magnus Carlsen in round 4. Let's have a look at some other great games fragments from yesterday. Baadur Jobava, a 2-7-1-3 in this position. He's playing white against Manuel Hoyos, 2-5-1-7. And with the rook on g8, you might be a bit concerned about your king safety, but white has seen some other implications of this position, and actually it's black's king that's questioned with this next move, knight takes g4, believe it or not. Now things get violent looking after knight h4, but can you spot what white played here? Actually this looks very tempting and maybe very strong as well, but it wasn't that. That's a clue. So white's play in this position. Okay, the even more incisive move, this is actually good, knight takes h6, but knight takes e5, and black king across the diagonal is really endangered. Black played rook takes g3 check. Now the king doesn't want to go over here, that would be a disaster to a mate in one. Now the king can actually play king f2 here, and white's in the driving seat. There's no useful checks for black. Black tried queen h3. If the knight was taken here, then this is very bad for black. The check here takes, it's a little bit like the game actually. Well, it's very, very clear here that the attack's run out and actually been munched, but in the game it wasn't much better. After knight takes e5, rook takes, king going here, queen h3, rook b8 check, knight c8 was played, rook takes c8, trying to drag the queen away to be able to play king takes g3, king g7, and now this discovered check, and the king is forced onto a light square basically there, which is unpleasant after queen h5 check. And here black resigned. He's actually going to be losing his queen. Say knight g6, then bishop takes g6 check, winning the queen after rook takes, queen takes h3. So Jobava seemingly stepping into a little bit of trouble with his king, but actually he's getting to the opponent's king across the diagonal. There wasn't much better for black here. So let's have a look at another great game fragment from yesterday. EventDate playing white 2-6-7-1 against Tsegmed Bachelon a 2-5-1-3. This is a fascinating game encounter with white casting queenside in this French defense variation. Black plays b5 and white lets go of the c3 pawn to further his own attack prospects. So knight f4, leaving c3 behind. That's taken. Now the rook swings across, rook h3 with tempo. The queen protects and attacks this one. And we have a remarkable game continuation here. Knight takes e6 check. The king could consider moving, but I guess rook takes c3 would be played like in the game. After f takes, we have check. Now if king e7 here instead of king e8, then this check is very annoying, winning the rook next. So king e8, queen takes e6 check. Now this rook takes c3, protecting the rook, so exchange sack. Now bishop b2, because black was potentially threatening queen takes a3 or queen, I don't think queen a1 particularly, but bishop b2 gaining a tempo, a critical tempo. Queen b4, now queen takes d5, so hitting the rook and also threatening to open up things against black's king. Rook b8, d takes c5. White's got a really crunching position with e6 now on the cards, or c6. So the black king pinned in the centre. Rook e8, c6, queen e7. And now even stronger than c takes d7, bishop takes b5, adding a bit more power to this. Black sacks the exchange, but to no avail here. King c7, rook takes d7, check, and black resigned. Unless black wants to give up the queen, which is pretty hopeless. Bishop takes d7, check will be mate after king d8, c7, checkmate. So pretty fantastic attacking game there from EventDate yesterday, a 2-6-7-1 with the white pieces. Very enterprising play against the French defence. Another great example, Britain's Michael Adams playing white against Shirov, who up until this round had been doing extremely well. Very dangerous player, Alexei Shirov, 2709. Adams playing white had just taken on d4, the knight. Black took with the pawn. Taking with the queen is not much better, actually, from an engineering perspective. Here, can you guess what white played? Simple but strong, actually. If I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, e5, threatening bishop takes h7 check to win the queen. It's actually basically it's a double attack basically of those two threats. So queen c3 handling one of the threats, temporarily losing the pawn. Queen c5, and here it looks as though, well, is this enough to win after queen d3? Hitting h7. Black first takes on d6, which is check. This might have been a bad blunder, actually, this natural looking move to take the pawn with check. The engine suggests g3, so this is maybe a backfire example. g6 here. Although white's better, it might not be as good as the game here. By taking on d6, now we have queen g3. And actually, these endgames are pretty grim for black because of this outside passed pawn. If queen takes g3, king takes, and for example, like this is bad news for black. Say bishop d5, a7, f3. This kind of end game is not very good for black at all. It's going to be winning for white. Okay, so in the game, the queens are kept on with queen b6, protecting that b8 square, but now deflection move a5 to try and get the queen away. Queen a7, queen d6, which carries with it now the idea of bishop f5 to get to that back row. Black plays g6, freeing the king, but now queen b6, and this very dangerous pawn has emerged here basically. Black took, and now we get this very, very bad endgame for black. Bishop d3, and now white is actually threatening in this position. Bishop a6, so no time to get the king in just yet because bishop a6 and b7 on the cards. So now king g3, this king is very quick to get into the center. King f4. Here, if f6, I'm not sure this is sufficient because of bishop e4 knocking out the blockade, the king has to come to the rescue of the b pawn, or at least stop this bishop e4, so hence f5 is played. Now we see g3, so safeguarding that pawn, and white's going to be playing king e5 next. Bishop f3, bishop a6, so this is now very bad for black, and in this position bishop b5 check is played. King takes d4. After bishop d3 here, Shirov resigned. There's no real prospects of any counterplay. For example, king b7, king c5, let's say g4. White could take there. This position is just winning for white. If, say, bishop e4, f4, we've got another pass pawn here. So two pass pawns will overload the bishop. Okay, let's have a look at another example from yesterday. Another interesting game was Munkgal Gomberson, a 2-4-1-8, playing black against Kozul Zdenko, 2-6-0-8. White is in a bit of difficulties here. Actually, let's add a bit here. So queen e3 was played, and black played an absolutely crushing move in this position. Can you spot it? If I give you 10 seconds starting from now, find the most incisive move. Okay, black played knight e2 check, and it's winning the queen or material. Let's see, if king f1, then bishop takes h2, hitting the queen. Other moves are not very good. Rook takes e2 was played. Bishop takes h2, check. The queen was won, and the game carried on actually for a little bit. f6, f4, the knight went back. Bishop d7 here. King f8. White tries rook e6. It's not really working very well. After takes queen e7. So f5 now. Queen f6. Hitting the bishop and knight. Check. King e8. And now here, white resigned. Another interesting example to show from yesterday of an interesting sacrifice or backfire. And that is Samir, a 2-1, 4-1, playing white against a much higher rated opponent. And the much higher rated opponent, Magami Essen, a 2-5-9-4, may slightly got over optimistic here, and should really, in theory, play queen h2 check. This is one of the better ideas for rook e6, and it's a strong attack that white is faced with ideas of rook f6 now and d4s. But here actually d4 was played immediately, offering the bishop, and it seems clever at first to offer the bishop for this check. But white in this position, although it looks scary to play king h1 for queen g3, in fact this position from an engine perspective doesn't seem to have a problem for white. After queen g3, just king g1, and it looks as though there's no real attack here, as long as king f2 is not played in this position. That would be a mate in 4 check, rook e3 check, and bishop e5 mating next move. But in this position here, king f1, and how does black proceed? If, say, rook e6, then bishop takes a8 is sufficient. Check bishop f3, and black has run out of attacking bits here. This is now harmless, so taking is just a perpetual check. So yeah, it's a bit fortunate for the higher rated opponent that actually in this position king h1 wasn't played, king f1 was played, and this is now a forced mate with bishop h2, so threatening queen g1 with this rook cutting off the king, and it's pretty hopeless now for white in this particular position. White resigned. The last little example I'd like to show you from yesterday of an interesting game fragment. Here, white has slipped up significantly already to reach this position with this active rook and this dangerous pawn on f3. White plays b3 here, and can you see what black played? A nice little move, getting a lot of pressure against white's king. What would you play here with black? Okay, f2 check was played, and so if king takes, then there's rook f5. So king f1 was played, but now after check here, queen h1 check, this is pretty hopeless for white. King e2 is just a mate in 3 after check and queening. King g4, queen h4. So here it's pretty hopeless. White's resigned, I think, in this position. So let's see, f2 check, king f1, queen h1 check. White resigned here. If king takes f2, then rook f5 can win the queen. That's good, but also this is good, just taking on h2. Okay, so some brutal stuff from yesterday. Hope you enjoyed some of this stuff. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.